And welcome back. In 2014, freelance journalist James Jim W. Foley was captured in Syria and publicly beheaded by ISIS after being held hostage for nearly 2 years. Jim's mother, Diane Foley, has made it her life's mission to share her son's story and continue his legacy of moral courage. Joining us now is the mother, Diane Foley, and we thank you so much, Diane, for joining us and sharing with us. And how you doing?
I'm good, Daren. Thank you for your time today.
No, thank you, and thank you for actually taking the time to share the story because your son's story was not just an American tragedy, an international tragedy, but as a mother, you have vowed to take his life and his legacy and take it to another level.
Well, Jim challenged me. Jim was very passionate about journalism and wanted our country, fellow Americans, to know about what's happening in different parts of the world. So he dared to go there and bring stories home to us. So he's challenged me to find some good out of the tragedy we've experienced.
Yeah. For yourself, honestly, it was an arduous experience knowing that you had a loved one that's actually captured by international terrorists and then having to do that negotiation piece. Talk to me a little bit about journalists, because we are on the front lines of a lot of things. But if you're a family member of a journalist, that's one of the dangers of what could possibly be. And so for yourself, I know that you've done some work with families right now of journalists and those who have been on those front lines. And talk to me about the conversation that you're having.
Well, 3 weeks after Jim was killed, we started the James W. Foley Legacy Foundation to prioritize the return of innocent Americans who are targeted for kidnapping or wrongful detention abroad, and to promote journalist safety, particularly with aspiring journalists, and to inspire moral courage. So I was very challenged after Jim was killed to somehow find some way to use the tragedy for good for others. And since 2014, more than 100 innocent Americans have come home, and our country now has a hostage enterprise that works very hard to seek to free innocent Americans who are targeted abroad, like journalist Evan Gerkowitz or Alsu Kermashiva, both who have been targeted and wrongfully detained in Russia, along with Paul Whelan. And we have fellow Americans being held in China, in Iran, in Syria. So it's a continued national security challenge for our country. Yeah. And I want to make fellow Americans aware.
We have a challenge when it comes to the hostage policy here in the United States, and I know a lot of people have had various different thoughts about that. Talk to me about your thought on the hostage policy here in the United States, and what can we as Americans actually do to raise our voice in cooperation with this?
Well, I would invite your listeners to read my book, American Mother, written with the help of Irish author Colin McCann. American Mother is a short book, but it's written to raise awareness of fellow Americans about the challenges we face as being targeted abroad. And our country since then has made strides. We now have a hostage enterprise who helps Americans be freed abroad, but it's still very difficult work. And the threat continues, and we need to work together with our Western partners to prevent hostage taking abroad, if you will.
Yeah. Your life has really, has taken shape since Jim's death, and you've really elevated the cause and made sure that his death wasn't in vain. As I talked about the book, you've also got all of the donations for the book going towards the foundation.
Well, a good portion of the donations do, but we always, as any small nonprofit, need the help of generous people who care about national security and fellow Americans who are being held hostage or wrongfully detained around the world. So I would invite any of your listeners to go to jamesfoleyfoundation.org to get a personalized copy of the book or to donate to our work. I so appreciate that, Daren.
Yeah. And we definitely will spread the word, and that's what we're doing right now is we're spreading the word. I want to go back for a moment because there was a critical part in this whole scenario. After Jim's death, I know that there was the court, and you had an opportunity actually to meet with one of your son's murderers in a court in Virginia. And if you could just go back for a moment, and I just wanted to ask you that moment, because I know that a lot of people talk about it, you talk about things in the book, but can you share with us a little bit about that moment? Was that a moment of closure? What was going on in that moment for you?
Well, it was kind of interesting. First of all, it took several years to find these two British jihadists who were responsible for kidnapping and torturing the 4 young Americans. But then to get them to the United States was also a lot of hard work by FBI and Scotland Yard. When they finally came to Virginia, one of them pleaded guilty to all 8 charges of kidnapping, torture, and accessory to murder. So that was Alexander Cody, and he also offered to meet with victims. So I did have the opportunity to meet with him 3 times, and it was healing in many ways. He expressed a lot of remorse. He listened to me tell him about Jim, and I tried to be open to listening to his reasons for entering ISIS and becoming part of all that the horror that ISIS inflicted on Syria and so many innocent people.
Yeah.
So part of it was good, though. I think we must find ways to talk to people we disagree with or hate, if you will, because hatred, everybody loses with hatred, Daren.
Yeah, indeed. You won't get me to doubt you on that one there. And thank you for sharing a little bit about that, because it demonstrates courage, strength, and also love and grace, which is something that so many people don't have in a day like today. What's the message that you have for people who find themselves in similar situations, families of journalists who are really out there on the front lines? We know that we've got a war going on right now, and anything is really liable to happen and can happen, and we've seen it happen. What's the message that you have for families out there of journalists about really just having that right mindset?
Well, I'd like your listeners to value our brave journalists. I mean, if we don't know what's happening in the world, in our country, and how can we protect our own freedom and democracy? So I've come to really value brave journalists, journalists like yourself who help us know what's going on in the world. I think that's one thing. And I also would like your listeners to recognize that very ordinary people like myself can, in our small way, make a difference by choosing to dare to make a difference for others. That we need to use whatever gifts we have to have moral courage, to dare to do good and try to make a difference in this world. Everybody's needed in this world.
Indeed. Diane, it's been great talking to you. I'm going to talk to my producer because I want to talk to you some more, and we're going to have to find a way to bring you back, and we'll definitely get you to talk a little bit more about this, because I think it's such a passionate topic that so many of us are not really talking about, but we do need to talk about. So Diane Foley, president and founder of the James W. Foley Legacy Foundation, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Daren, for your time. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too. You take care now. Listen, if you want more information, visit the website, jamesfoleyfoundation.org, and don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more with Open right after this.